There we go. Welcome to Story Chats at Inspi Romance. I'm Elizabeth Madry, and I'm here today with my two co-hosts.
I'm Narelle Atkins.
I'm Valerie Comer.
And Toni Shiloh is back with us again, and we are excited to be talking about her upcoming release, The Love Script. You've joined us a lot, so I probably don't need to read your bio, but we're going to. It's been a couple times that you've been on that I haven't read it. So just in case we got new people, Toni Shiloh is a wife, mom, and Christian fiction writer. Once she understood the powerful saving grace, thanks to the love of Christ, she was moved to honor her Savior. She writes to bring him glory and to learn more about his goodness. She spends her days hanging out with her husband and their two boys, and that's Toni. So we're glad you're here, Toni. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to start out on the hot seat, and now having done an episode where we talked about one of my books, we might need to revisit how we do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And just tell us a little bit about The Love Script without reading the back cover.
Oh, that's great. It's been a while since I've read the back cover, so I don't really remember what it says. So basically, The Love Script is the story of Nevaeh Richards. She's a Hollywood hairstylist who loves to make people shine. She's all about being in the background, not the foreground. But then as she's leaving a client's house who happens to have a very famous son, she trips, he catches her, paparazzi shoots the photo, and her anonymity is gone because she agrees to fake date him to save his reputation, because Lamont Booker, the hero, he's known for his faith, his celibacy stance, and so they're calling into question if that's actually true, and they want him canceled.
Okay. Very good. All right. And that actually leads into Narelle's kickoff question perfectly.
Yes, it does.
Oh, you planned it that way.
I know, right?
It is a perfect segue. So let's talk about Lamont and his faith journey. So, I mean, he's the rich and famous Hollywood actor known as SMA, which is Sexiest Man Alive. And he's been a Christian for about 5 years. His last public relationship was with a lady by the name of Diva, as if Diva is her first name. That's just not a nickname. And he's got a public celibacy. I mean, he's basically made a public celibacy pact. So everybody around the world expects him to be celibate until he is married. And he also has a group of guy friends who he communicates with. They're not in Hollywood, but there's lots of fun text messages that go flying around. And as Toni has already mentioned, there's this morality clause where he fears being cancelled if he doesn't meet the contractual obligations that go with that. So let's talk about what Lamont's life was like before his mum's hairstylist decided to turn it upside down.
So before the 5 years, or?
Oh, anytime. You can start before 5 years, during 5 years, but up to the beginning of the story.
Okay, great question. So I've always pictured his life like once he hit rock bottom and realized that he was in need of salvation, that he did everything he could to make sure he wouldn't go backwards. So that's how you see him studying his Bible in moments. He puts it in his contract that he has to have a day of rest so that, he gets that Sabbath rest. Even though he's an actor and they could, film whenever, that's his, one stipulation. Not only that, but he does charity work is what I imagine. He does charity work. Mm-hmm. He publicly shares his faith. So it's not a surprise that he's a Christian. Like, no one's shocked about this. And I feel like sometimes people are shocked when you find out certain people are Christian. You're like, really? I wouldn't have guessed that. But his actions match his profession of being a Christian.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that was something I appreciated. I think that the whole concept of being a public Christian is quite tricky for a lot of people, not just in Hollywood, but in other areas and other professions as well. So I really love the way that was tackled in the story and really enjoyed this book as well.
Thank you. It's not my turn, but I'm going to ask real quick. When you were when you were picturing him, is there an actor that you wanted us to picture for him? Because I kept cycling through like 5 guys who could be him. So who did you model him after in your mind?
I should have looked his name up. He's the guy from Taxi. I don't know if you guys ever saw that with Jimmy Fallon and Queen Latifah.
Okay.
Her boyfriend is who I pictured
Okay.
as Lamont Booker.
Hmm.
All right.
It cracked me up how she kept referring to him as Lamont Booker, like not just like Lamont
Not
or
Lamont,
whatever.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
casual. I was like Lamont Booker. Took
Yeah.
her probably halfway through the story to like
Dilated.
just a
At
teensy
least, yeah.
That was just a really fun little aside that just made it more unique and more like truly in someone's point of view.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it was just an unexpected little quirk on her behalf. So
I'm
do I get
glad
to
you-
talk now, or do you have
Yes,
more?
you
You're
get
looking
to go.
that up,
You get-
aren't you?
You
Aren't
get to
you,
go
Beth?
now. I
You're
am
looking it
totally
up.
looking it up. I want to know who it is. But you go. You're good.
Okay, good. So I want to talk about fake relationships and lying. Now, I've read a lot of fake relationship books, and I've even written a couple. And I was, I guess, refreshed by the fact that these people didn't approach it casually at all.
Mhm.
And in fact, really didn't want to approach it at all, but for the sake of his reputation, which, I mean, it's a story, right? So you everybody gets a little gimme that, you believe this, you can believe the rest of it. So it's a tricky trope. And I mean, in the 10 Commandments, you shall not bear false witness. But I love that they both struggled really big time with the fact that they were lying. So can we talk about the struggle and how you decided to approach that fake relationship thing?
Yeah, definitely.
No spoilers, of course, but
I love fake dating relationships. I mean, they're just so much fun because it questions everything you believe in, right? Like you say you're a good person, you say you don't tell lies, but then you're actively portraying a lie. Like, so in this case, I wanted them to obviously say, look, this goes against our faith. Like, how do we reconcile that? But I also my thought process was like, when you're in trouble, don't you want to fix it? Like, I think most of us want to fix it, and it feels really difficult not to do anything. And so in their case, they're like, well, obviously it's for the greater good. Like, the good outweighs the bad. Nevaeh even throws up the subject of, look, Rahab lied, like trying to justify it somehow. But I think that's really what we all struggle. Like, when we get in those situations where we're like, are we going to tell the truth? Or are we going to trust that God's got some magical way to fix this? Like, which way are you going to go? So I liked their struggle just because I felt like we've all been there. We can all relate, but they also, suffer the consequences of getting into that.
As they should, right?
As they should,
Definitely.
absolutely.
I think of that same thing when I'm doing my Bible in 1 year. I come across Rahab, I come across some other places, and I'm like, well, she was obviously not chastised. Oh, well, she wasn't, one of God's people. Oh, but that guy was, and it was still just kind of brushed over. So I like that you just went, okay, head on. This is the dilemma, because I know that there are Christian readers who are like, oh, I don't like fake relationship stories because of the lying aspect. And so I really love that you just went, okay, this is what it is.
Yeah.
Rubber meets the road. How are we going to deal with this? And I got around it kind of by the characters not really walking strongly with the Lord at the time. And I bet you came at it from strength of believing, like right at the outset. And so that was a fresh take, shall we say, on it. So I enjoyed that.
I liked that part of it as well. I like you handled it well. And I liked that it wasn't like one conversation and now we're good. Like it kept coming up because I find so often in fake dating, books, they might have a conversation about it, but they don't continue to struggle. It's like, and I mean, that can be realistic too. Like you can make up your mind that this is what we're doing, so we're going to be okay with it. But I liked the fact that it was something fairly continual, and that it played into like the spiritual arc for both of them as well, which was good.
Yeah.
Appreciated that. Which leads into my question.
As though it were planned.
As though it were planned.
Actually kind of mostly wasn't.
No,
anyway.
it wasn't, but that's okay.
We pretend.
We do.
But not by lying. Not by
No,
lying.
first of all, I will say, for those of you who also are curious, Henry Simmons.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's good looking.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's
Oh
him.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's him, eh?
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, I can.
Oh, yeah.
totally
So if
see
you're
that.
just listening on the podcast,
Oh,
hop
yeah.
over to YouTube and whatever
Yeah.
minute this is, I don't know, but go find it.
Yeah, or IMDb, which
Yeah.
is an app that exists purely to solve questions when you
Or my-
have them about.
Yep.
Or my Pinterest board, because
or Tony's Pinterest board. There you
Oh,
go.
there we go.
Excellent. So, one of the themes that Nevaeh struggles with throughout the novel is the fact that she does not attend church generally, and that she feels convicted of that she needs to be doing more to gather and to fellowship. And it stuck out to me because I just had a heroine who was struggling with this in one of my books recently as well. Because I feel like collectively in our own lives, like COVID made it really convenient to like lay on the couch and watch church online. And then, and then getting back out of that and remembering why it's important, that you don't always just visit Pastor Pillow and Sister Sheets, so it's the Church of the Holy Comforter, right? So I'm sorry,
Oh, my
I'm the
word.
only one who grew up. Whenever someone would skip church, my mom would always ask, "Oh, you went to the Church of the Holy Comforter, I see," with Pastor Pillow and Sister Sheets. So,
Never heard that one before.
okay, well,
No, it's new to me.
go entertain your friends.
Excellent. Okay.
But it is, even in my own life, it was hard initially to get back into that, set the alarm Saturday night. You can't stay up reading till all hours and all of this kind of thing. So why did you work that into her journey? And I think it's probably not spoiling to mention some of the reasons that Nevaeh has for not wanting to, and why you went there.
okay. Great question. I went there because I feel like society as a whole, a lot of people are backing away from the church. People who, grew up in the church, people who got saved, somewhere in the middle of their life, but then they got burned by the church. There's so many reasons why people are leaving. And I wanted to explore those reasons in Nevaeh's character, and then, basically figure out like what's the conclusion through it all. With Nevaeh, for her, it's the lack of diversity. It's, growing up in a fire brimstone church and not wanting that type. So she has, a lot of different reasons. And I think a lot of people always say, well, I'm still a Christian. Like I can still praise God at home. I can still worship him alone, which is all true. And I wanted her to explore those, but I also want her to come to that moment where she realized church isn't for her. And I think a lot of us are on the journey to figuring that out if we haven't already. Me personally, I've had like bad church experiences, and I always have to remind myself like the church is full of sinners saved by grace. They're not perfect people, and I'm not going for them, even though you want good relationships, but in the end I'm going to get closer to God, to worship him. So that was the one reason. I was hoping that anyone who's struggling with the church aspect would be helped.
I think you hit it. I enjoyed watching her wrestle with it. And her conclusion, I appreciated that she got to the point. And again, this is such a, I don't want to say it's a small part of the story. It's a good, important part of the story, but like, I'm not ruining the story for you to say, I don't think I am. That she got to the point where, like you said, it wasn't like, church isn't about you. And where she was able to realize, like, maybe I would prefer that everybody in here look like me, but also that shouldn't be why I'm refusing to worship God in this setting. And I think, that's something everybody can say. Maybe there aren't enough fat people at your church, and so you feel self-conscious because, like, you're the only, or there are all kinds of physical reasons why you might feel like you don't fit in, but you're not at church, and nobody at church, and if they are, it's a them problem. They're not judging you because of how you look. Because that's not why they're there either, generally. And if that is why they're there, they're in the right place for God to deal with that.
Amen.
Well, they say the church is the hospital for the spiritually sick.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing that when I was a teenager, and that stuck with me, is that you are not going to find a perfect church. You're never going to find a church that's going to meet all your needs. Like, that's just unrealistic to think like that. But I loved how Lamont handled it. And that's all I'm going to say, because I'm not going to spoil the story, but he wasn't judgmental, and he was just adorable.
Didn't back down either.
No, he was like, not a doormat, but also not obnoxious. Yeah.
Yeah,
I find it interesting because I think all three of you live in very urban areas with many optional churches that you could attend. Some are closer, some are a little more closely aligned, some is where your friends go, whatever. I live in a very rural area, and there are very limited options, where I might agree with the theology. There's limited options even if I don't agree with the theology.
Sure.
So I think I've seen sometimes people in these types of areas, including my own, where they're like, well, I just, like, that church is the only one that I could go to, but I went there and blah, 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 blah. Somebody was mean, or I didn't like the pastor or whatever. And then you don't have another option necessarily. And so I just want to kind of acknowledge that. I know more people live in urban areas than don't. That's why they're urban areas, right? But it can be especially tricky, I think, for ruralites to find and just to really feel at home, settled in. I know when we moved back to this area, we had lived here before, and we moved back quite a while ago now, 2000, but we're like, but where will we go to church? Because it was a huge, huge issue, because we knew what we'd left behind when we left years before that. And we weren't happy with the options, and we were kind of like glad to get away, right? But here we were back, and sometimes it's just a heart thing where you have to say, like you said, Narelle, it's you're not going to find a perfect church. It's not going to be, you might, but probably not. And you have to wrestle these things, as Toni and Beth have done in their stories, and go, okay, how is it important for me to be in fellowship, even if I don't like all these people, or if I don't always think the pastor is dead on, or the worship, oh my word, I would really like the other style, whichever the other style is, right?
Right.
And still just go, you know what, it's important to gather together, and sometimes it's really hard to do that. I just want to, that's my little sermon for today. I'm over.
Yeah, and I'll just add one thing, and I think it's much harder if I look back to if I go back 30 years and look to when I was younger, it was so much easier to go to church because there was so much less happening on a Sunday. in general. Like Sundays were shopping was only just starting to happen on a Sunday. The supermarkets were closed. The grocery stores weren't open on a Sunday when I was growing up. And I think now it's like Sunday's like a normal day. And I think that just puts a lot of extra pressure, a lot of extra challenges. A lot of people have to work on Sundays as well, and they don't have a choice. So it's a really complicated issue, and there are many people, many pastors, many theologians, all sorts of people writing books about what's going on with the church. And I think that's a topic for another day in a nonfiction setting. But I'm really happy that Toni tackled it, because I think it will really touch people. That part of the story, if you're struggling with attending church, this is not going to be a book where you feel judged. Well, it'll be a book where you feel supported. Yeah.
It's one of the things I love about Toni's faith arcs in general is that they're not like clobber you on the head, but they're like practical. They're practical, which many people, like Valerie, yours are the same way. I try to make mine the same way. There are authors doing practical faith arcs, as opposed to like the CCR of my younger days, where it was like salvation and that was it. Like once, that was the faith arc. So I like that there are books that are including just little things quietly that make you stop and think. I love that. I'm assuming this is set up as the first in a trilogy, because there are three guys.
We sincerely hope so.
Yes,
because we would like to meet these other two guys.
So can you tell us about that and like projected time frames and that sort of thing?
Yep, I can. So, like you said, it's a trilogy. It's the first book in the series. All of the guys will be in a spotlight, essentially. So that's why the series is called A Love in the Spotlight. So Lamont is first, and then the second book is A Run at Love. That is going to release May 2024, May 7th. It's about Piper and Tuck.
Okay.
There will be,
and so that is based where?
In Kentucky. And there will be lots of Kentucky Derby talk.
This is the horse book, isn't it? The horse racing. Yeah.
Yes. And then the third book will be Chris and his lady, and that one is supposed to release February 2025.
Okay. And the general
idea for that one, he's a wildlife conservationist, but has gotten popularity doing YouTube videos about that. So he's also a YouTube influencer. But yeah.
So that's his spotlight.
Yeah.
And
cool.
Huck's spotlight is the Kentucky Derby. Is that right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Cool.
Looking forward to those.
Yeah, that's gonna be
yes.
Because the text between those three guys, I gotta say, it was a teensy tiny bit reminiscent of some of Beth's books. Because I'll say this until one of us dies, probably. But I just love Beth's guys and the interactions and the banter and all the stuff between them, and that all that texting between those three guys in your story, Toni, was a bit reminiscent of that. I was like,
they had great.
Yeah, we need close-ups of these other guys too. So
yeah, I had to cut a lot of texting out. I think I had way too much fun with it.
It's not
but it was so important though, because it really looked at, when you're looking at church community, it was such a lovely foil for Navia, who didn't have that close group of friends who were going to church. And I thought that was a very powerful,
challenging her.
Yeah.
In her walk at all. Yeah.
And accountability, like he had this accountability group of guys who are praying for him, and she's an island floating around somewhere trying to work out what's going on. I thought that was the metaphor of that. I really appreciated.
Yeah. The difference in the friend groups, like she had her roommate who's a little cray-cray.
Who was not really her friend. Spoiler alert.
and he had this solid group of guys, so which again was a fun contrast.
Yes.
And just as a bonus, I loved his mom, so you guys are going to get to meet Lamont's mother, and she's in and out of the story. I mean, she's not the main character by any stretch, but she's important and she's great, so you guys are going to love her too.
I loved her too.
All right. Well, do you have a final thought, Toni, on the book? Anything you wish we'd got to that we didn't?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think you guys hit all my favorite parts. So
Yay.
you're good.
All right. And we talked about the trilogy coming up. Are there other books? Do you have any Love Inspired's coming soon or anything else
No.
coming out? No. Okay.
Just these guys for right now.
So the next one will be May.
Yes.
Excellent. Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
No, I just realized I have a Christmas book coming out in September.
I sat here totally confused with that conversation because I'm thinking there's a Christmas book.
Yes, there is. It's a
Tell us
Christmas
about your
book.
Christmas book, Toni.
It's You Make It Feel Like Christmas. It's actually one of my indie books. They offered me the contract, gave it a new title, new cover. I added content, and it re-releases in September.
Excellent. Which
Yeah.
is it? What was it originally called?
It was I'll Be Home. It was the first book in the Lewis family series.
Excellent. Very good.
Oh, are they gonna redo the other ones too?
I
Guess we'll
don't
see, huh?
know. Yeah, we'll see.
Excellent. Very cool. All right. And ToniShiloh.com, right?
Yes.
And that's where you'll find Toni and all of her socials, including your
Including her Pinterest.
Yeah, exactly. So you can go look up Lamont.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Toni, so much for joining us again today. We always love having you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us to listen or watch. If you have questions or just want to rave about how amazing the Love Script is after you've read it, please leave us a comment, and we would love to hear from you. You can leave comments on YouTube or on Facebook. If you are over on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And in the meantime, don't forget to fall in love with a good book. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.